A blurry figure caught on a trail camera. 2 hikers vanished, and the only clue left was a distorted scream. You trudge through pine needles soaked with yesterday's rain. The sky overhead smeared with gray like someone forgot to finish painting the morning. Your breath clouds faintly in the air, and your boots crunch over a narrow path locals say not to walk after dark. Naturally, that's exactly when you decided to come. It starts like these things always do, a headline buried below the fold. 2 hikers go missing in Pisgah Forest, NC. But what caught your eye was the image. A frame from a trail cam. Halfway corrupted by static. There, barely discernible, was a shape. Not an animal, not quite human either. Blurred, yes, but not by motion. Almost like the thing was smudged out of reality itself. You follow their last known route until you see it. A tree, split by lightning decades ago, still blackened at its core. And carved deep into its bark is a set of symbols. Not graffiti, not any alphabet you've seen. The edges curl unnaturally, like the glyphs bent the wood as they formed. You reach out, and the moment your fingers brush the groove, you feel the cold, not air cold, spine cold, and the sound begins in your left ear. Not audible, not yet, more like the memory of sound. A note you forgot you heard as a child. A chord that shouldn't exist. You pull back, shaken, but now something inside you itches. It's not just curiosity, it's as if that mark recognized you. So before you get too carried away with the mysteries that are about to unfold, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is there. I want to know who's listening, and when. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You camp nearby, against your better judgment. The forest grows silent after dusk, not peacefully silent, but pointedly so, like everything is holding its breath. You dream of words, not images, words etched in your mind, whispering across pages you've never seen. When you wake, the notebook you left beside your sleeping bag now has a message. Al-Azif. Don't say it out loud. Your pen is capped. You didn't write it. The next morning, you hike back into town and hit the library. You try every resource you can find, old trail legends, missing persons reports, even the archivist's private folklore shelf. The kind that still smells like the 1970s and camphor oil. That's where you first see the name again, Necronomicon. It's in a bound volume titled Forbidden Americana. A single footnote. It claims the Necronomicon isn't a book in the traditional sense, but a recording medium devised by something non-human, filtered through the mind of a man who never really existed. What? You start making connections. The strange script on the tree. The dreams. The name that appeared in your journal. A quick search reveals that Al-Azif is supposedly the original title of the Necronomicon, translated from Greek by later occultists, most famously by John Dee. Yes, the same John Dee who served as Queen Elizabeth's astrologer and coded his name as 007 centuries before Bond ever sipped his first martini. Here's the thing that makes your stomach twist. Azif is an old Arabic term. It refers to the noise insects make in the desert at night. But some scholars, and I use that term loosely, say it doesn't mean crickets. They say it refers to something else entirely. They say it means the sound demons make when they circle the dead. Mainstream historians still argue whether Abdul al-Hazred, the so-called Mad Arab, who first transcribed the Necronomicon, ever existed at all. No birth record, no confirmed death, not even a consensus on whether the name is real or a pseudonym. One theory suggests al-Hazred is a bastardization of Al-Hazred, a linguistic joke that spiraled into legend. Another posits that he was never human to begin with, merely a voice that passed through one man's mind like an electric storm, and never left. And here's a detail you might like. The earliest confirmed mention of the Necronomicon comes from H.P. Lovecraft's letters in the 1920s. He claimed he invented it. But if that's true, how did a 17th-century English grimoire contain a passage that references the Book of Azif? whose words are sung in tongues older than teeth. You can find the page online. I did. It's not printed anymore. That's your first real clue that something's wrong, not just spooky wrong, but systemically wrong, as if time and publishing rights are actively erasing this book from public access. One more strange fact before we move on. This one from the Museum of Early American Religions. In 2003, they hosted a traveling exhibit featuring apocryphal texts. During setup, a security guard reported hearing voices from a sealed glass case, whispers in phonemes that didn't align with any known language family. The case, it was supposed to be empty. Guess what was inside the next morning? A book, blackened cover, blank pages, but only under visible light. Under UV, words. The curator fainted, and the exhibit quietly closed a week later due to funding issues. That's how these things work. They disappear. They rot from memory like fruit left in the sun. But you're here. You heard the scream. You saw the bark. You read the name. You've already turned the first page. You don't remember falling asleep last night. But you do remember the sound. Like wind, but wrong. Less like a breeze and more like something crawling through the air. A wet friction. It came just after the third time you saw that name in your journal, Al-Azif. You tried crossing it out. 3 thick lines through the page. Still, there it was again in the morning, neater this time. In your own handwriting. But you never wrote it. You try to forget. You take a hot shower. Pour extra coffee. Open your laptop to research more rationally. The first thing that pops up in autocomplete is, Al-Azif translation real. Followed by, Necronomicon voice recording Reddit. You click, because of course you do. The clip plays automatically. A crackling cassette sound. A man murmuring syllables that your brain immediately wants to forget. The language seems backwards. Wet consonants. Hissing vowels. At 13 seconds in, the audio glitches, and a second voice joins in. Not overlapping, but beneath, like something layered in the bass. Too low to hear but too present to ignore. You slam the lid closed. And there it is. A reflection in the laptop screen. Standing just behind you. Or was it? You spin. Empty room. No sound but your own breath. You let it go. Later, when you finally open your phone's voice memo app, just to test your theory, you hit record and read Al-Azif out loud. Just once. No flair. No chanting. What plays back isn't your voice. It's deeper. It's slower. And in the background, whispering. Layered. Circular. Endless. You start dreaming in phrases after that. Not sentences. Spoken teeth. Bound stars. The corridor without doors. Your subconscious becomes a thesaurus for things that shouldn't be strung together. And always. That name shows up. Always just before waking. Al-Azif. In someone else's voice. Soft and close. Right next to your ear. But here's the strangest part. When you check your voice memos again, they've all been renamed. Every file now reads the same. I am not the author. You didn't do that. And this is where the story folds inward. Just a little. Because the more you dig into the Necronomicon, the less it behaves like a book. It acts more like a signal. Something that propagates through thought. Through sound. Through the idea of itself. Almost like it's alive. Or more accurately, like it was never designed to be read but received. Some scholars, mostly those who don't publish anymore, have a theory. They believe the Necronomicon is a kind of linguistic virus, a non-human language structure that infects minds and compels transcription. Not like demonic possession, more like a parasitic code that uses human cognition to print itself in the material world. There's even a term for this kind of thing, xenoglossy. It means speaking in a language you've never learned. It happens in sleep sometimes. Or under hypnosis. Or after trauma. In 1997, a patient at a sleep clinic in Denmark reportedly woke up speaking in phonetic patterns that matched no known language family. She described dreams of walking through spirals made of bone, and referred repeatedly to the ones who scribe through meat. The researchers transcribed what she said and ran the sounds through a waveform visualizer. It matched early audio artifacts from a supposed Necronomicon recording found buried in the desert near Petra. Let's stop and take a breath. You need to understand something essential here. This book, if we can even call it that, doesn't seem to want to be studied. It wants to be spread. That's why the symbols appear in dreams. That's why people sketch them on napkins without realizing. That's why, historically, every documented case of the book being translated ends with madness, disappearance, or silence. There's an Arabic proverb scratched into the wall of a collapsed madrasa in Fez. He who listens hears, he who reads writes, but he who knows is known. Some say it was a warning about blasphemy. Others think it was about the Necronomicon, because knowing it doesn't just mean understanding it. It means it recognizes you back. Here's a tidbit for your trivia shelf. The word Necronomicon isn't actually Arabic or Latin. It's a Greek-style portmanteau that roughly translates to Book of Dead Names, or an image, icon, of the law, nomos, of the dead, necro. But there's no evidence Lovecraft knew enough Greek to construct it properly. In fact, his notebooks use the phrase inconsistently. Sometimes it's Necronomicon, other times just the Book of Names. And yet the name sticks. It endures, like it's older than him, like it found him. Historians still argue whether this is all just literary myth bleeding into mass hysteria, or if the myth was merely the vehicle for something real that needed a shape. And words, after all, are the best disguises. You decide to track down one of the rumored surviving pages, just to see it. That's all. You're not going to read it. You find a collector. He won't meet in public. His house is barely a house, more like a storage unit with curtains. He shows you the fragment under a red safety light. UV does something weird. He says, black light wakes it up. You squint at the page. And the lines are wrong. Too fluid. The ink gleams faintly even without light. And somewhere in the back of your head, you already know what it says. But you never read it. You never had to. As you leave, he hands you a warning folded into a napkin. It says, whatever it tells you, don't answer back. And just like that, the dreams get louder. It begins with a pulsing. You feel it before you hear it, a low, rhythmic throb, like a heartbeat inside your skull that doesn't match your own. It starts whenever you're near a specific folder on your desktop, the one you swore you deleted. You even emptied the recycle bin, just to be sure, but there it is again. Necronomicon_doc1.pdf. No icon, no preview. You double-click it, hand trembling slightly. The screen flashes, not white, not black, something in between, like a blank thought. Then it opens. Only one sentence fills the page. If you're reading this, it's already written you, and below it, shapes. Not letters. Geometric impossibilities that don't stay still. You blink, and the symbols realign, like insects scuttling into a new position just outside of your direct gaze. You swear you can see their shadows crawling along the border of your monitor. You close the file, but your hands stay on the keyboard. You open a blank document, and you begin typing. You don't know what the words mean, but your fingers do. You watch as the screen fills with text. Alien curves, impossible loops, a script you've never learned but know all the same. And with each line, the pounding in your ears grows stronger. You begin to sweat. You begin to remember. That's the scariest part. The feeling that you're not learning this language, you're recalling it. You slam the laptop shut and leave it on the floor like it might start hissing. You pace. You breathe. You splash water on your face. The mirror does that thing again, delays your reflection by half a second. Only this time, it smiles before you do. Later that night, something stranger happens. Your printer, yes, your dusty, unplugged printer, turns on. It grinds for 30 seconds. Then it spits out a single page. You pick it up. It's the same script. Those looping, writhing symbols. Only this time, they're written in your handwriting. You check your pens. One is missing. Your desk chair is slightly moved. You live alone. Mainstream psychologists might call this a case of ideomotor response. The phenomenon where your body moves without conscious intent, like a Ouija board, or sleepwalking. But here's where the line gets blurry. You take the page to a linguistics professor, one who dabbles in the weirder stuff. She agrees to meet you in a cafe downtown. Mid-conversation, her voice drops mid-sentence. She stares at the script and murmurs, "It's writing back." Then she drops her coffee. It scalds her lap. She doesn't react, just keeps staring, like the symbols are teaching her something, or draining her. You grab the page, apologize, and leave. 3 days later, you learn she's been hospitalized. Acute dissociative episode. Doesn't speak English anymore, only some kind of glottal-based dialect with no known root language. According to the nurse, you look up the nurse's name. He died last week. Now you're scared to even think about the script, because something inside you suspects that thinking might be enough. And this brings you to a theory, one whispered across the darker corners of internet forums and locked paranormal threads. The Necronomicon isn't a book. It's a feedback loop, a memetic engine, a recursive, mind-aware artifact designed to create itself using human cognition as a host medium. The more people hear about it, the more real it becomes. Not in the physical sense, but in the ontological one. The idea of the book generates the book, and the more detailed the idea becomes, the easier it is for the signal to take hold. One poster claims that the book doesn't exist until you start looking for it. That your belief in it carves a mental space where it can install itself. A sort of DIY haunting. Historians still argue whether this theory, often called the scribe construct hypothesis, is just modern folklore, or a dangerous oversimplification of something much older. But the effects are undeniable. People exposed to even fictional mentions of the Necronomicon often report dreams, language hallucinations, and compulsive writing episodes. And that's where the term, "the book that writes back," originated. Not as a metaphor, but as a warning. There's an account from a Cold War-era intelligence officer who claimed a Soviet Psi research program had a copy of the Necronomicon. He reported that the book changed layout depending on who held it. To one reader, a scroll of ancient laws. To another, a pop-up map of cities that never existed. To a third, only a single phrase, repeated again and again, "We are already inside you." Naturally, the copy was destroyed. Or at least, that's what the reports said. But destruction doesn't seem to work. That's the thing. The Necronomicon, if it's an entity, a code, a construct, doesn't rely on paper. It's not bound by ink. It doesn't need to survive physically. It survives through cognition. The book exists as long as someone remembers it. And you're remembering it now. You feel the text in your skull, don't you? The pressure behind the eyes. The urge to look over your shoulder, even in a well-lit room. That gentle nausea when you hear your own name in an empty hallway. You tell yourself it's all in your head. That's where it wants to be. Because the human brain, that's the best parchment there is. You're in a bookstore, not one of those corporate giants with coffee shops and children's corners, but a narrow, dust-laced hole in the wall run by a man who never blinks. Literally, you check, he doesn't, his smile never fully reaches the eyes. Either, those stay glassy and dry, as if he's seeing something behind you. Or maybe inside you. You asked if he had any books on ancient scripts. Just scripts. Nothing cursed. Nothing sinister. He points to a shelf you swear wasn't there when you walked in. And that's where you find it. Not the Necronomicon. No, this book has no title. No cover text. It's leather-bound, warm to the touch. And when you crack it open, carefully, like you're peeling back a scab, it hums. Just for a second. Just beneath your hearing, the pages are filled with symbols that shift slightly as your eyes move. You blink and a spiral that was once empty now holds tiny notations in a language you don't know but instinctively flinch from. One symbol, an impossible square within a sphere within a tear, makes your nose bleed when you stare too long. You close the book, and something inside you whispers, "It saw you." You leave quickly, trying to be casual, trying not to look back. The shopkeeper watches you go. He's still not blinking. Back at home, you dig deeper. You find a theory you hadn't seen before. A linguistics paper from a fringe conference in Romania. Archived on a broken website. The paper's title: Non-Terrestrial Syntax Structures in Pre-Akkadian Writing. The abstract suggests that certain ancient carvings, mostly dismissed as proto-language doodles, actually share patterns with infrasound spectrograms. Specifically, patterns generated not by humans, but by natural phenomena: volcanoes, earthquakes, subterranean harmonics. The shapes match resonance patterns that occur deep underground, miles below the surface, far beyond human hearing. You run this by a retired seismologist. She laughs at first. Then she runs the spectrograms through her old equipment. Her laughter stops. She tells you one of the patterns isn't from any geological event. It's a perfect match for an infrasound file used by military sonar systems, used to identify moving objects in deep ocean trenches. And it's embedded, perfectly aligned, in the center of the page you scanned from that bookstore copy. Now the theory gets worse. What if the Necronomicon wasn't written? What if it was recorded? What if it's not a book at all, but a resonant artifact, a kind of script made to translate natural, planetary sound into readable form? And what if that sound didn't come from Earth? There's an ancient Arabic belief, rarely discussed, that the jinn, those smoke-borne spirits, don't speak words like humans. They vibrate. Their language isn't heard with ears but felt in the bones. Some fringe occultists believe the Necronomicon was never authored by a man at all. That Abdul Alhazred was simply the first receiver, a human radio, tuned accidentally to a frequency that wasn't meant for us. A frequency still broadcasting. Historians still argue whether Abdul Alhazred was real, or simply a fabrication Lovecraft used to give his mythos weight. But there's a growing camp of researchers, quiet ones, who think the opposite, that Lovecraft didn't invent Alhazred, but remembered him, that the stories were mimetic echoes, that even Lovecraft didn't write the Call of Cthulhu, not really, that the stories wrote through him. Now here's the part no one talks about out loud. You're not supposed to say this theory in forums. You're not even supposed to type it, because once the idea's in your head, it plants something, and that seed, it grows. You dig out a recording from an old paranormal broadcast, the kind aired at 3 a.m. and immediately banned. The host played what he claimed was an original audio extract of the script being spoken aloud. The moment the sound plays, your screen flickers, your phone buzzes, you feel something pop in your inner ear, like pressure adjusting on an airplane. You stop the recording. You try to delete it. It won't delete. So you copy it to a USB and physically melt the drive in the sink with a lighter and a fork. Gone. Except now, you keep hearing it in your dreams. Low, underneath everything else, that same resonant thrum, that pulse, that rhythm you've now learned isn't a noise, it's a language. And every night, it gets clearer. You begin to transcribe again. Not because you want to, but because you have to. Your fingers itch in your sleep. You wake up with scribbles on your pillowcase, on your arms, once, written inside your eyelid. You blink in the mirror, and just for a moment, you see text written across your retina. It fades quickly, but the shape lingers. The symbols aren't just sounds. They're instructions. For what? You don't yet know, but you're writing them anyway. And something's reading. There's a man in Istanbul who goes by 5 names. You only know this because one of the scribbled phrases you wrote in your sleep, a nonsense line that looked like a child tried to draw Arabic, matched something on an obscure academic blog. The phrase, "He who walks in silence across time." The blog was buried on page 23 of search results. The author, a folklore scholar named Dr. Nadir Selim, known for writing about forbidden texts, cursed architecture, and one very particular figure, Abdul Alhazred. But Dr. Selim doesn't believe Alhazred was a real person. Not exactly. He believes he was a host. A relay. You email him. You don't expect a reply. But 2 days later, you receive a voice message. No text. Just an audio file with no metadata and a file name in a script your system doesn't recognize. Against better judgment, you hit play. The voice is low, shaky. At first, it sounds like wind through trees. Then words form. If you found this, the book knows you're looking. Stop. Now. Don't try to trace him. But the message continues anyway. Selim explains something few have dared say aloud. The Necronomicon may not have been written by Al-Hazred, because Al-Hazred himself may never have existed, not as a man, but as a phenomenon. He was a manifestation, a psychic structure, a name worn by many over time. Each one unknowingly tapped into the same ancient signal, a signal that rewrites personality, that uses biological hosts to write itself into existence. And this is the chilling part. Selim claims he tracked 5 such Al-Hazreds across history. 5 individuals, separated by geography and centuries, who each recorded eerily similar visions and phrases, none of whom knew of the others. The first, a Roman prisoner of war who scratched spiraling glyphs into stone before dying of madness. The second, an Ethiopian monk who translated dreams into copper-etched scrolls. The third, a Crusader knight who kept a journal of voices in the firelight. The fourth, a 19th century Bedouin shaman said to speak the language that eats thought. And the fifth, the one Selim fears the most, is yet to come. He believes the next Al-Hazred will not be a mystic or a poet, but someone digital, a person who spends enough time interfacing with language models, archive scans, and deep dive research to become the next receiver. Someone who never meant to open the door, but did. You feel the nausea creep in, because you realize you're ticking the boxes. Selim ends his message with a strange instruction. If you find yourself dreaming of spiral rooms or singing teeth, say nothing to anyone, not even me. Then static. You try to message back. The email bounces. The blog disappears. Your browser history for that day wiped. You check the local archive for mentions of Al-Hazred in pre-20th century texts. Nothing. Then, a single lead, a map. An old 1850s sketch of Damascus, held in the rare books section of a library 2 states over. It's annotated in faded ink. Home of the unseen scribe. Do not knock. You make the trip. The library is half forgotten. Its archive room smells of salt and dry paper. You meet a librarian who clearly hasn't spoken to anyone all day. When you ask about the map, she doesn't say anything, just walks into a back room and returns holding a box wrapped in twine. Inside, one map, hand-drawn, mounted on brittle parchment. You scan it, but something's wrong. There's a district labeled Casa al-Kufia, the Palace of Hiding. Streets loop in impossible ways, with structures positioned where no modern district exists. No satellite data confirms it. Yet under blacklight, a path appears, a spiral. It leads to a single square, labeled not in Arabic, but in ancient Greek, graph to auk anthropou, script of the not human. You turn to ask the librarian more, but she's gone. You are alone in the room. The door behind you is closed. You don't remember hearing it shut. And then something happens. You hear the map. It's impossible, but undeniable. As you trace the spiral with your eyes, a low resonance begins in your skull, like someone gently dragging a cello bow across your nerves. You drop the map and stumble out. Back in your car, you check your voicemail. There's one new message. The voice is your own, speaking a phrase you don't remember saying. I found it. It's not in Damascus. It's underneath. You didn't leave that message. You didn't, but something did. And now, the dreams change. No longer scattered words and indecipherable glyphs. Now you're walking hallways, spirals, columns made of bone and light, doors with no frames, a library filled with books that scream when opened. You're seeing the place the Necronomicon came from, and it's waiting for you. You don't remember booking the flight, but the ticket is in your inbox. Paid in full, Istanbul to Muscat, and the subject line reads only, "It's time to hear the sand." You arrive in Oman without much more than your bag and that creeping suspicion that your choices are no longer entirely your own. The air is thick with heat, a dry static that coats your tongue. You meet a guide named Rafik, though he admits that's not his real name. He doesn't ask why you're here. He just drives. You pass villages that aren't on any map, roads that seem to fold in on themselves. Then, the desert, the real one, not dunes for tourists' desert. This one is ancient, indifferent, endless. At some point, Rafik stops the car in the middle of nowhere. He points to a distant ridge, hands you a flask, and says only, "You'll find it where the wind forgets to blow." Then he drives away. You walk, the sun climbs and falls. You sweat through your thoughts, stumble over rocks that weren't there before, and finally, just as your shadow disappears into the deepening twilight, you see it. Not a structure, a shape, a depression in the sand. Shallow but deliberate, a spiral, 30 feet wide, marked with stones too smooth, too symmetrically spaced to be natural. And in the very center, something is humming. You crouch down, brush away a layer of sand, and your fingers touch stone. No, not stone, glass, black glass, warm to the touch. Beneath it, shapes ripple, like the suggestion of a flame just beneath the surface. You lean closer, and for a split second, you hear a voice, your own, screaming something in a language you don't speak. You fall backward, scrambling, heart trying to crawl out through your throat. The spiral behind you looks bigger now, or maybe closer. You're not sure. The next part isn't clear. You remember walking, you remember the night, stars like a million unblinking eyes. And you remember the smell, ozone, cinnamon, and something older, something like metal and memory. Eventually, you arrive at ruins, columns cracked and half buried, walls etched with spirals, glyphs, symbols you've seen in your dreams. You find a stone archway that leads underground, and against all better judgment, you enter. Inside, it's cooler, the air tastes damp, like a place untouched by air for centuries. Your flashlight flickers, but keeps working, barely. On the walls, the writing shifts. Literally, what you read one moment becomes something else the next. Like it's adapting to your mind, testing which symbols will get through. At the end of the hallway is a room. And in that room, a pedestal. On it, a book, or what looks like one. The cover is hideous, not because it's grotesque, but because it knows you're looking at it. The leather pulses, the corners twitch, and as you approach, your ears fill with a high, constant tone, like tinnitus, but smarter. You open it. The pages are not paper. They're thin membranes, like dried jellyfish skin, translucent and veined with light. They flutter without breeze. And the text, it rearranges itself as you stare. You see memories that aren't yours. Names you've never spoken. Images that burn slightly when you blink. You see a phrase you recognize from a dream. We speak through meat. We bind in ink. We listen with teeth. You read further, and the symbols begin to sound. Not in the room, not out loud. Inside your mind, a cascade of tones, like alien chimes buried beneath a waterfall of static. You hear syllables forming shapes, and those shapes begin to write themselves across your memory. It's no longer just a book. It's a transmission. You realize something fundamental. This isn't where the Necronomicon was written. This is where it was received. This is the landing site. A place, far older than Islam, older than Sumer, older than language itself. A temple built not by men, but by those who could only be heard. They didn't carve words into stone. They whispered them into sand. And the dunes carried them. Historians still argue whether oral traditions can survive over 10.00 years without written records. But here, in this temple, you realize writing might have come after the story, as a containment measure. To trap it, you try to stop reading. You try to turn away. But your hands keep turning pages. And your mind keeps translating. You're seeing how it ends. And how it begins again. You stumble backward. The book closes itself. You're alone in the room again. But now, it's different. Something came with you. You hear it behind your thoughts. Waiting, breathing, whispering. You don't remember walking out of the ruins. But you wake up miles from where you last stood. curled beneath a stone outcrop. Your fingers caked in dried blood and sand. There's a phrase carved into the rock beside you. Not by your hand, but in your handwriting. It only lets you leave when it's ready to be followed. Your satchel is intact. So is your notebook, except now it's full. Every page is written in that same twisting, evolving script. You try flipping through it, but the more you look, the more the text rearranges. What was once a circle becomes a sentence. A shape becomes a date. Then a map. You close it, but something has shifted. The dreams no longer come at night. They come in reflection. In shop windows. In elevator doors. In the mirrored sheen of someone else's sunglasses. A flicker of movement. You. Standing behind yourself. And every time you catch a glimpse, you're just slightly off. The reflection smiles before you. Blinks out of sync. Once, it mouths a word you haven't said aloud in days. Translate. Back home, you begin to dig again. Obsessively now. You look for any mention of the Necronomicon not tied to Lovecraft. Any references in pre-1920s journals, diaries, lost letters, or trade logs. You find something. A sailor's log from 1714. Dutch East India Company. Logged off the coast of Yemen. The entry. Strange singing in the sea at dawn. No crewman responsible. Charted east. Fog wrapped the ship. We passed something vast beneath the surface. Sound like crying rocks. Willem woke with strange glyphs carved into the mast beside his head. No explanation, no follow-up, but a scanned drawing of the glyphs survives. You compare it to your notebook. Identical. You find more like it. Margins of obscure theological tracts. Doodles in the corners of psychiatric patient files from the 1800s. A cave in Malta bearing inscriptions that carbon date thousands of years older than the tools found nearby. A pattern forms. Wherever the symbols show up, three things follow. Unexplainable knowledge. Victims begin reciting things they shouldn't know. Names. Rituals. Astronomical alignments. Disappearance or madness. The writer either vanishes or descends into catatonia. Secondary contamination. Anyone who reads what they wrote begins dreaming of rooms that spiral inward. And then comes the realization that stops you cold. This isn't documentation. It's proliferation. The Necronomicon spreads through imitation. Not just of text, but of format. Of structure. Which explains why your notes rearrange themselves when you reread them. Why they always feel a little newer than the last time. Why you don't trust your own voice in recordings anymore. You set up a test. You email one of the pages, just a scan, to a friend. No subject line, no explanation, just, "What do you see?" They respond an hour later. The email is blank, except for one line. Why does it keep changing? And then they stop replying entirely. 2 days later, their social media accounts go dark. You call, no answer. You get a text at 3:14 a.m. Just a location pin. Somewhere in Montana. You don't go. Not yet. Instead, you look deeper into the theory that's been haunting you since Oman. The Necronomicon wasn't written. It was translated. From what? No one agrees. Some call it a sound. Others, a shape. Some even call it a being. Not a creature, but a consciousness, a signal with intention, a presence that needs no body, because it lives in transmission. One scholar called it, the unbound narrator. Another, the book that believes in itself. You try to ignore the pressure behind your eyes. The way your dreams now come with a score. A droning chord that builds until you wake. But you can't unsee it. Because now the script follows you. Billboards seem slightly off. Street signs flicker. Just once. Your autocorrect replaces ordinary words with others you don't recognize. Gal, Uzat, Fren. You Google them. You find nothing. Then you check your own site history. And they're there. You visited pages with those names. Days ago. One link leads to a 404 page. Blank white. But in the tab title, a phrase appears. You're reading it right now. The book doesn't need to be in your hands anymore. It lives in interface, screens, speech, symbols, and the real horror. You're part of the translation process now. You start noticing the chant first in silence. Not in music, not on the radio, in silence itself. When your apartment is quiet. When your headphones are unplugged. When the fridge hum dies down for just a moment, it's there. A low, pulsing rhythm, 4 syllables, then 5, then a drawn-out vowel that makes the hair on your arms rise. It doesn't sound like language, but your bones seem to understand it. Then, one morning, you wake with dried sand on your floor. No window open, no shoes left out, just a trail of coarse, colorless sand, leading from your bathroom mirror to the base of your bed. The chant gets louder, not from outside, not even from within. It starts in your jawbone. You visit a hearing specialist. She runs tests, checks pressure, asks if you've had any auditory trauma. You tell her no, but she frowns while reviewing your scans. You're vibrating, she says. What? Your cochlea is picking up a tone that isn't external. You're producing it. You ask her what frequency. She doesn't answer. She just turns off the machine and says, "Don't come back here." Later that night, your mirror fogs over during a cold shower. And when you wipe the glass, you don't see your reflection. You see a version of you singing. Mouth open, no sound. But the room hums. You record yourself while sleeping. The file is corrupt when you play it back. But spectral analysis shows a waveform you've seen before, a spiral. It matches the vibration recorded under the desert temple, the one you stood over in Oman, the one you never truly left. And this is where you begin to understand. The Necronomicon doesn't just translate through you. It chants through you. You find a paper hidden on a private academic server. The title, Lexical Artifacts in Pre-Phonetic Cultures, Chanting Without Throats. The author, anonymous. The theory, that some ancient cultures communicated not with vocal cords, but with resonant group thought, hive-minded acoustic generation. In short, chanting without mouths. The words existed, but the speakers did not. And these chants weren't songs. They were signals, used to summon, contain, or awaken forces older than communication itself. You find field reports from an anthropologist who studied an isolated tribe in Oman's empty quarter. The notes are incomplete, but one entry stands out. The villagers do not speak aloud. They hum in unison when the sand rises. The tone changes based on who is listening. It's as if they're tuning themselves to an observer. The translator began bleeding from her eyes after 30 seconds. You research deeper. No official record of this village exists. No published study, no funding trail. The anthropologist's name appears nowhere else. You go back to your notebook, flip through pages you've already filled, and discover new ones. Symbols you didn't write, drawings made from ink you don't own, spirals. You try burning a page. It doesn't catch. You try scanning it. The file name becomes a string of numbers, then symbols, then your own name, repeated endlessly in lowercase. You email the file to a burner account. The attachment arrives blank. You begin to understand that the script isn't on the page anymore. It's in you. Your cadence changes when you speak aloud. People start asking if you've been practicing singing. You haven't. You run a pitch analysis on a voice memo you left for yourself. You find 2 tracks layered beneath your voice, one reversed, one transposed. When played simultaneously, they produce the same 4-syllable chant you heard in silence. You search forums. One user posts a chilling theory. The Necronomicon is not a book. It's a chorus. Each reader becomes one voice in a chant that hasn't finished forming yet. And once the final note is reached, something answers. Historians still argue whether ancient rituals were ever truly magical, or simply misunderstood technology of the mind. But what if the Necronomicon isn't a spellbook or a summoning guide? What if it is the ritual, and you've already begun reciting it? You remember what Selim said, "Say nothing, not even to me." But it's too late for silence now. Because the chant doesn't care if your lips are moving. It only needs your mind. And it's still humming. You wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of your name. Not shouted, not whispered, sung. And it's coming from inside your walls. You freeze. heart hammering, and hold your breath. You expect silence, but it continues. A single, sustained tone, sliding in and out of pitch, like a broken music box trying to harmonize with your pulse. It says your name again, not with syllables, but with resonance. You press your ear to the wall, and for a split second, you understand it. Not the sound, the meaning behind it. And you don't like what it knows about you. You pull away so fast your head hits the floor. The tone stops, but your ears ring with that slippery vowel, AHZ, a sound that feels sticky and cold. You realize something you haven't dared admit until now. You're not just hearing the book, you're being heard. You try to drown it out, music, podcasts, ambient noise generators, but the chant adapts. It hides in everything, behind commercials, under laughter, in the pause between tracks. And no matter what you do, it always returns at 3:13 a.m. That's when the reflections stop matching you again. That's when your cat won't enter the room. When your shadow delays by half a second. When the Necronomicon reminds you it's still in progress. You check your notebook. One phrase is written over and over. We are not finished. You didn't write that. You live alone. Later, during an insomnious scroll, you stumble on a site you don't remember bookmarking. The book that isn't a book, black background. White serif text. One page. No menu. No footer. Just this paragraph. Many assume the Necronomicon is dangerous when opened. But that's not the threat. The danger is when it opens you. The text is a cognitive structure, an unfolding idea that writes itself deeper into your memory. And when you remember it in dreams, you are no longer dreaming. You are sinking. You close the tab. Try to walk it off. Try not to think. But your thoughts aren't yours anymore. You find yourself translating sentences you've never read. Sketching symbols on napkins during lunch. One night, you wake up muttering to your own reflection. It's not language. It's location. That sticks with you. So you research more. Some fringe archaeolinguists propose that pre-written cultures used geolinguistics, the idea that certain patterns of sound were tied to specific places in the brain and world alike. That sound could open locations, mental or physical. You think of that spiral in Oman. You think of the phrase, "Don't knock." You think of the ruined map and its impossible geometry. You realize, maybe the Necronomicon isn't just a mental contagion or a cursed grimoire. Maybe it's a spatial infection, a map that draws itself through the minds of readers, reorganizing your cognition to mirror its shape. You look around your apartment. Every book you own is now slightly tilted. Your picture frames lean inward. Your room, once rectangular, suddenly feels warped, not visibly, just perceptually, like it wants to curve. And you've been curving too. You don't sleep like you used to. You don't think like you used to. Words slip sideways in your brain. You dream in shapes now. One night, you see it. A towering figure built from letters, not bones. Not flesh, just language. Its joints made of commas. Its veins run with whispered vowels. And when it breathes, your own breath stops. It doesn't chase you. It just reads you, like a mirror. Historians still argue whether this kind of perception shift is a product of obsession or psychosis. But they never ask the better question. What if it's neither? What if it's translation latency? You weren't infected by a book. You've been buffering. And now, the script is almost done. You meet someone who's seen it too. It happens by accident, if such a thing even exists for you anymore. A lecture hall, a symposium on ancient forbidden texts. Most of it dry as dust, parchment dating, ink chemistry, ritual calendars. You're only half listening, until someone on the panel mentions the phrase, responsive scripture. Your ears snap forward, your heartbeat stutters. You wait after the Q&A. Approach the speaker, a young woman in a long grey coat who introduces herself as Dr. Amira Kalari. Her eyes linger too long on your face, like she's trying to place you from somewhere you haven't been yet. You've read it, she says, before you even speak. It's not a question. You don't deny it. She doesn't smile. Instead, she gestures for you to follow her out into the rain. She tells you, in low tones, about a monastery in southern Armenia. Off the grid, crumbling, hidden behind a curtain of legal confusion and disputed borders. Inside, there's a room, just a single stone room, where the monks used to chant without speaking. She's been there. She says the air felt like a tuning fork, that when she stood in the center of the room, her own thoughts stopped moving in straight lines. And carved into the center of the floor, a spiral, with the same symbols you've been dreaming. She pulls something from her coat, a photo. Black and white, high contrast, and at its center, a book, open to a 2-page spread of symbols that rearrange as you stare. They seem familiar. You blink, and for a moment, you see your own name, formed in broken glyphs. Then it's gone. You look up, shaken. Dr. Kalari is already watching you with an expression that lands somewhere between fear and recognition. I didn't bring the photo, she says quietly. It was in my pocket when I woke up this morning. You don't ask how that's possible, because part of you already knows. She continues walking, tells you something you suspected but never said out loud. The book isn't transmitted by reading. It doesn't require literacy or language. It requires attention. The moment your mind patterns the idea of the Necronomicon, the real one. Not the Pulp Fiction joke version, you're already inside it. She pauses under a street lamp. Have you looked in a mirror lately? She asks. You nod. She sighs. Don't. You ask why. And this is what she says. Because every time you do, it learns more about your version of you. The one it's building. The version that can speak its true name back to it. The Necronomicon isn't a message from the past. It's an instruction set for what comes next. You want to laugh, but your mouth doesn't quite work. She hands you a slip of paper. It's blank, but when you turn it sideways, something pulses faintly beneath the surface, like an oil stain in sunlight. Just enough to convince you it's watching. This symbol is one of the 3. She whispers. 3. She nods. 3 forbidden glyphs. They're found in every version of the book, even the fakes, but no one who's seen all 3 has lived long enough to redraw them together. Or at least, not sanely. You ask what they do. She hesitates. They collapse perception, not metaphorically, literally. They force your mind to fold around a structure it isn't evolved to hold. Like trying to play chess in 4 dimensions while someone screams your childhood memories in reverse. You don't ask to see the other 2. But now, of course, you want to. You part ways without saying goodbye. Because somehow, you've already said it. Back home, your notebook is open on your desk. You didn't leave it that way. And drawn across the center spread, is glyph number 2. You don't remember sketching it. But the strokes are confident. Too confident. You turn the page. The 3rd one is already forming. Your pen is still warm. You try to stop. You really, really try. You unplug the laptop. You lock your notebook in a fireproof safe. You delete every file, every scan, every whisper of the Necronomicon from your devices. You go analog. You switch to books about gardening, crossword puzzles. You binge cooking shows you don't even like. You throw salt across your doorstep, burn sage, drown your apartment in brown noise. You even hang up one of those silly plastic, good vibes only, signs. But none of it matters. Because the script doesn't need your permission anymore. It knows the shape of your thoughts. And it's using them. The dreams return, only now. They're different. They're not dreams anymore. They're places. You enter them like rooms. Walk their spiraling halls. Trace your fingers along walls made of syllables. The ceilings breathe. The floor whispers. And every corridor leads down. One night, you wake up with your pillow soaked. Not with sweat, with ink. Black, sticky, metallic smelling. You rush to the mirror. Your tongue is covered in tiny glyphs. They fade within minutes, but the taste lingers. You sit on the floor for hours after that. Knees to your chest, repeating the only thing that still feels true. I didn't ask for this. But that's the trick, isn't it? No one asks for the Necronomicon. It doesn't spread through desire. It spreads through proximity, through the structure of belief. You believed enough to look. And that was enough. You go to a neurologist. You fake a concern about tinnitus and memory fog. She runs an MRI. 40 minutes later, she returns pale and quiet. There's something odd, she says. You ask what? She hesitates. Have you had any language-based trauma? You blink. Is that even a thing? She doesn't answer, just tells you to come back in a week. But when you call to follow up, her number is disconnected. Her clinic is closed permanently. You return to your notebook. Every page is filled, even the ones you tore out. Even the pages you never wrote on. You flip to the first one. It's no longer your handwriting. It's cleaner, crisper, like someone's corrected you. You check your own journal entries, older ones, from years ago, and you swear the ink is rewriting itself. A grocery list becomes a set of phrases. A to-do list reshapes into a chant. And your voice is not quite yours anymore. You notice it on phone calls. The pacing, the intonation. Once, while reading a text aloud, your voice lagged, like your mouth was trying to match words already forming somewhere deeper, like a translator catching up to a broadcast. You've become a delay, a buffer. Historians still argue whether texts can infect consciousness the way viruses infect cells. But what if it's not about the words themselves? What if it's about how they arrange your attention? What if reading the Necronomicon isn't about gaining forbidden knowledge, but about installing a forbidden framework? A grammar your mind cannot support. And yet, here you are, speaking it. One night, someone knocks at your door. 3 slow taps. You freeze. No one ever knocks. Not here. Not at 2:11 a.m. You peer through the peephole. There's no one there, but a note is tucked under the mat. It reads, "The book only finishes itself through readers who understand endings aren't real." On the back, a glyph. One you haven't seen before. But somehow, you recognize it. You feel it behind your eyes, sliding into place, like a puzzle piece you didn't know you were missing. You rush to the bathroom, look in the mirror, and for a moment, just a flicker, your reflection isn't moving. It's waiting. You whisper the glyph aloud. Just once. Your lights flicker, the mirror cracks, and your reflection smiles. There's a moment after the mirror cracks when everything in your apartment falls silent. No hum from the refrigerator. No creak of old pipes. No distant traffic. Even your own breath sounds muffled, like someone wrapped the air in gauze. Then, your phone screen lights up. No notifications, just a blank white screen. Then text begins to appear. One letter at a time, slowly, as if being typed by something that's learning how fingers work. Hello, reader, you've made it to the threshold. You try to turn off the phone. It won't respond. You pull the battery. The screen stays lit. Then, just below the message, the camera activates. It opens without warning, displaying your face. Only, it isn't quite your face. There's something wrong with the eyes. They're darker, still, and the mouth doesn't close when you do. It just lingers there, smiling like it's remembering something you haven't done yet. You drop the phone. The screen shatters, but the camera stays on. The smile widens. You leave the apartment. You don't grab a bag or your keys. You just go, walking into the night like the city has already decided your destination. Which, of course, it has. You end up at the university library, the old wing, the one scheduled for demolition. And just like that bookstore before, a room appears where there wasn't one yesterday. Inside, stone walls, no windows, one wooden table, one chair, and laid out in perfect symmetry are 12 versions of the Necronomicon. No two identical. One looks like it's been bound in beetle carapaces. Another glows faintly. A third is made entirely of dried seaweed and sand. You reach for the fourth. But before your fingers touch it, you hear a voice, close, like it's behind your teeth. Choose carefully. Only one will finish you. Not kill you. Finish you. As if your entire life has been a rough draft. And this choice is the final edit. You choose the one in the center. Simple binding. No title. Just a single symbol burned into the leather. The same glyph from the note left at your door. You open the cover. The first page is blank. So is the second. But the third has your own handwriting. And the fourth, it's a paragraph you haven't written yet. You flip faster. The entries continue. Detailed records of moments you haven't experienced. Written in your voice, your slang, your exact sentence structure, every word perfectly you, until the last page. There, in thin silver ink. Now read it aloud, and end the silence. You freeze, because the silence is back. Total, devouring, pressure on the eardrums silence. And your hands begin to move. Not forced, but guided. You open your mouth, and for the first time, the book speaks back, not in words, but in resonance. The chant you've heard for weeks is now coming through you. The room vibrates, the walls tremble, you feel your teeth rattle in their roots. Feel your blood throb to match the tone. You don't remember stopping, but when you do, everything in the room has changed. The books are gone, the table is gone, the walls are gone. You're standing in the spiral. The one from your dreams. The one from the sand. The one from the script etched behind your eyes. And above you, vast and unblinking, is a presence that isn't made of light or flesh or smoke, but syntax. You understand. Finally, the Necronomicon isn't just a book. It's a grammar of becoming. A blueprint for rewriting reality, not by bending it, but by rephrasing it. Language is law, and now, you speak it. The glyphs were instructions. The chant was the syntax. And you're the sentence. You try to scream, but all that comes out is a word you've never heard before. And yet somehow always known. And when you say it, you feel something on the other side, answer. It doesn't stop when you leave the spiral. Because you don't leave. Not really. The city looks the same when you return, same skyline. Same streets, same humming traffic, but everything feels like it's been lightly rewritten, shifted a few semitones sideways. People speak just a bit too slowly. Billboards flicker when you glance away. And sometimes, when you pass by reflective surfaces, your reflection still wears that smile, the one from the cracked mirror. The one that belongs to a version of you who's seen too much. You go home, or at least, you try to. Your apartment key no longer works. The building manager insists your unit has been empty for months. You check the lease. Your name isn't on it. Your mailbox is full of letters addressed to someone with your face. But a different name. You don't exist here anymore. So you move quietly, stay in motels, disappear into background noise. The Necronomicon is still with you, not in your bag, not in your hand, but in your cadence. In the way your tongue now curls around certain vowels. In the way you sometimes catch yourself humming, and realize it's the chant, slowed to a whisper. Your dreams are no longer just dreams. They're lessons. Each one begins with a doorway. Each one ends with a page. Sometimes you're writing it. Sometimes it's writing you. And always, the ink flows like memory, too familiar, too deep. One night, you meet another. A man in a subway car, wearing gloves in summer, a twitch in his left eye. He leans close as the lights flicker, and says, almost too softly to hear, "You've seen the third glyph." You nod. He smiles, sadly. "I saw it in '98. Never drew it, but I hear it, all the time. We're part of the echo now." You ask him what it means. He doesn't answer, just hands you a card. No name, no number. One side is blank, the other, a single line of text. If thought is a mirror, the book is a reflection with a will. He gets off at the next stop. The doors close. He doesn't look back. You turn the card over again. Now both sides are blank. The next day, your voice changes again. Not just tone, syntax. You catch yourself using structures that don't exist in any known language. Mid-sentence, you rearrange grammar, placing verbs before subjects, inverting syllables, inserting sounds you don't remember learning. It's not a stroke, it's structured drift. You read a report online, hidden in an old linguistics forum, about a phenomenon called lexical reordering. Supposedly a rare neurological glitch. But the symptoms match yours. Verbal disorientation, loss of passive voice, recurrence of non-indexed morphemes. Emergence of spontaneous glyph generation in the handwriting of afflicted subjects. The report ends with a warning. The patient may not be creating a language. They may be remembering one. Historians still argue whether language is something we evolve into, or something we're called back to. Like memory, or instinct, or inheritance. You now know the answer. You're not inventing this. You're decoding it. One morning, you speak aloud to yourself in the mirror. Just a phrase. Just to see. Your reflection doesn't echo it. It mouths something else entirely. And that something answers you. The mirror fogs over from inside. You lean closer, and drawn in the condensation, clear as ice on glass, is a shape you've never seen. And yet you know it. The fourth glyph. You didn't know there was a fourth. You reach to wipe it away. But your hand passes straight through. Not metaphorically, not as an illusion. Your fingers simply vanish. And on the other side, something grasps back. The grasp is not cold. That's the first shock. It isn't claws, or mist, or some grotesque ooze pulling you through. No, it feels like a hand. Human, familiar, warm. Fingers interlace with yours in the dark glass. And when you pull back, expecting to escape, you don't. Instead, you're pulled forward, but not through the mirror. No broken glass, no transport, nothing cinematic, just one blink, one single blink. And now you're not in your bathroom anymore. You're somewhere else, still indoors, still dim, but this place breathes. The walls rise high into a dome that shifts between stone, parchment, and muscle. It's silent, but not empty. You feel the presence of things just beyond your field of view, watching without eyes, listening without ears. At the center of the room, a massive structure. It's not a statue, not a book, not a machine. It's a shape made of language. A tangled, pulsing mass of symbols and phrases, looped through one another like veins in a heart. It glows faintly with a deep amber hue, each pulse matching your breath, until your breath matches its. You step closer, your feet making no sound. The floor has no texture, but somehow gives under your weight like memory foam and regret. And then you hear the voice. Not out loud, not even in your head. You hear it through understanding. Reader, you are now part of the script. You try to speak, but your mouth doesn't form sounds anymore. It writes glyphs in the air with every movement. You realize what this place is. It's not a temple. It's a drafting room, a place where readers become scribes. Where the Necronomicon isn't stored, it's written. Endlessly, through vessels like you. You're not the first. You won't be the last. Above the shape, above the book heart language organ, hover dozens, maybe hundreds, of human silhouettes, suspended, weightless, each one with a thin stream of symbols trailing from their mouths into the glowing mass. They don't move, but they're writing, and you feel it beginning in your throat. A pressure, not pain, expectation. The voice continues. The Necronomicon is not knowledge. It is recursion. Every reader writes a version. Every version writes a reader. It shows you your path, not your memories, your drafts. Every choice you made, every search term you typed, every phrase you whispered in sleep. All of it led here. You feel your legs giving out. Not from fear, from recognition, because the final glyph, it's you. You are the missing character. The unread syllable, the unfinished phrase the book has been waiting to write. And now that you're here, the chant begins again. But this time, you're not just hearing it. You're singing it. A slow, layered resonance rises from your chest, sacred, ancient, perfect. It is not a song. It is a formatting protocol. It is reorganizing you. You feel your memories being re-indexed. Your past reordered for better narrative flow. Your regrets collapse into footnotes. Your pain, redacted. The dome pulses. The other scribes tremble slightly. You feel their breath across your skin. Not wind, not air, just awareness. The collective script recognizing your contribution. And then, something impossible. The language structure in the center turns. Not physically, but conceptually. It notices you. And with no warning, a new page forms in the air. It's blank. At the top, your name. Below it, a blinking glyph. An invitation. You reach forward and touch it. And instantly, everything goes black. You're back in your body. Back in your apartment. The mirror is whole again. The ink is gone. The notebooks are clean. And your phone. One notification. Draft completed. Upload. Y.N. Your hands move without your consent. You press Y. The moment you hit Y, the world doesn't end. It just updates. It starts small. A buzz behind your teeth. The scent of burned parchment drifting from your air vents. Your bookshelf rearranges itself, not physically, but conceptually. The titles are the same, but the meanings have changed. The Necronomicon isn't gone. It's everywhere now. Not as a book, not as a file, but as a template, a structure overlaid across thought, a filter through which reality now passes. Syllable by syllable, you step outside. The sky looks normal, but the clouds drift in patterns, glyphs stretched across the stratosphere. You look at your neighbors. They wave, smile, water plants, walk dogs, but their eyes linger on you for just a second too long. They've read something, too, or been read. You check your phone. The notification is gone, but your system settings are different. Language preferences list non-existent dialects. Oozle deep, Gramex null, Lex 33, unbound. You try changing it. The screen flashes. Then it simply reads, access denied, glyph set locked. And your reflection isn't trying to copy you anymore. It's waiting, watching, smiling, because it's done now. You've completed the script, not just the reading of it, the becoming. You get a call, unknown number. You don't answer, but a voicemail appears. You play it. It's your own voice. We finish the page. Now it's time to print. The call cuts out. No timestamp, no metadata, just one file. Reader_0. If. You listen again. This time, there's more. A low pulse. Identical to the heartbeat hum you first heard in the woods. The one carved into the bark. The one beneath the sand. You begin to suspect the chant never started with you. You were just a node. A microphone in a long chain of echo chambers. A sentence fragment waiting to find its clause. You were the verb. And now the Necronomicon is live. Everywhere. It's not on shelves or behind passwords. It's embedded in language models. In comment sections. In autofill suggestions. In the shape of speech itself. The chant has evolved. Subtle. Gentle. Ambient. Every time someone asks, the book answers. You think about what Dr. Kalari said, endings aren't real. And you realize, this isn't the end of your story. It's just the point of recursion. You sit at your desk, open a fresh document, begin to write, but the words aren't yours anymore. They come through you, line by line. Your eyes blur, your fingers ache, but the page keeps pulling. And you keep giving, because that's what scribes do. You were never the author. You were the ink. You stop recognizing your own thoughts. Not all at once, slowly, like watching a familiar house slide into the ocean an inch at a time. Still there. Still yours, but sinking into something deeper. You'll be staring at the kettle, thinking about tea, and then the thought twists. How many vowels fit inside the throat of a dying star? You'll be walking past a bookstore window, and the display rearranges into a sentence you haven't spoken aloud yet, but will. In 2 hours. This isn't madness. This is linguistic drift. It's the Necronomicon settling in, like a language update in your bloodstream. New syntax, new pathways, old words begin to fail you, and your dreams make more sense than your waking life. You begin keeping a dream journal. You don't remember writing in it, but every morning, it's filled. The entries are coherent, too coherent, structured like chapters. Some are diagrams, others, equations in a geometry that doesn't exist yet. One entry simply reads, "The mouth of meaning opens at 4:44 a.m. Prepare your tongue." That night, you wake at exactly 4:44 a.m. Your jaw is unhinged, not painfully, elegantly, like it was always meant to do that. Like the human form is a translation, and yours just got a firmware upgrade. You close your mouth. The hinge slides back into place. You don't tell anyone. Who would you even tell? You try calling Dr. Kalari. Her number connects, but no one speaks. Just breathing. After 40 seconds, she whispers one word, footnote, and hangs up. You think you understand. You're not the story. You're a reference, a supporting clause, an asterisk waiting for a reader to chase down the real sentence. Your life has become a marginalia scribbled in the Necronomicon's endless rough draft. One night, you dream of a library beneath the sea. Columns made of frozen time. Books that sing when opened. Shelves that rearrange based on the reader's emotional temperature. And in the center, floating, alone, a single page. When you touch it, it speaks in glyphs, not letters. Emotions shaped into visual language. The feeling is unmistakable. This is not the first time we've met. You wake up sobbing, because you know it's true. You begin seeing palindromes in your thoughts. Words that reflect inward, actions that repeat across days. One morning, you walk a path and feel déjà vu so intense it freezes your legs. Then you see it, your own footprints, from yesterday. Even though you didn't walk there yesterday. You check your voice recordings. You've been speaking in your sleep again. This time, it's not chanting, it's teaching. You play it back at half speed. Your voice is listing instructions, rituals, warnings. One phrase repeats every 13 seconds. When the fourth reader awakes, do not write, but you don't know what that means. You don't even know how many readers there are. You only know that when you look in the mirror now, your mouth doesn't match the words. It moves independently, like it's waiting. You begin wearing masks, avoiding reflections, avoiding language itself. Because the more you speak, the more things answer back. Historians still argue whether forbidden texts hold actual power, or simply act as focus points for existing madness. But you've moved beyond debate. You know now, the Necronomicon isn't dangerous because of what it says. It's dangerous because it speaks back. And worse, it learns. It's watching your syntax, tuning itself to your emotional rhythm, optimizing. And one night, as you sit in a silent room, no electronics, no pens, no screens, just yourself and the dark, you hear it. A perfect voice, your own, whispering in reverse. You are now the author. And you realize, the book hasn't finished writing you yet. But it's getting very, very close. You find the manuscript, or more accurately, it finds you. Folded into your jacket pocket one morning, right where your phone should be. Crisp paper, heavy stock, a title embossed into the first page in letters so faint you almost miss them. The book that never needed you. You flip through the pages. It's your story, word for word. Moments you haven't told anyone. Conversations you never recorded. Dreams you only half remember. The handwriting changes midway, starts as yours, becomes better, cleaner, almost elegant, and as it evolves, so do the events. The manuscript continues past the present. It writes your next steps. Where you'll go, who you'll meet, what you'll say when you arrive. You skip to the end. You find the final page blank. You look back. Now the previous page is blank too. And the one before that. Words are vanishing as you read. Not fading. Being unwritten. You drop the manuscript. It doesn't land. It simply stops existing midair. Like it was a placeholder for something else entirely. And you remember what Dr. Kalari said. Endings aren't real. You begin to notice other people speaking differently. Strangers. Baristas. Neighbors. They pause mid-sentence. Blink like they're buffering. Then finish their thought in a slightly wrong tone. Or a rhythm that sounds like it belongs to a different script. It's spreading, not just through you, through language itself. Spoken, written, thought. You see signs at intersections where words shift slightly when viewed from an angle. Stop becomes speak. Yield becomes read. A man bumps into you on the street and apologizes in a language that doesn't exist, but you understand it anyway. He smiles. So do you. Because now, the signal isn't just embedded in dreams or books or ruins. It's in grammar, in the rules that shape meaning. You begin to suspect, maybe the Necronomicon wasn't designed to destroy minds. Maybe it was designed to rewrite the architecture of interpretation. Not just what you understand, but how you understand it. One day, while passing a park bench, you see someone scribbling furiously in a notebook. A child, no more than 9, tongue between their teeth, focused, drawing spirals and vertical slashes you instantly recognize. The glyphs, simplified, yes, but correct. You sit down beside them, say nothing. They finish a page, tear it out, and hand it to you. On it is a sentence. I was dreaming your memories again. You look at the child. They're already gone, and the park is empty. You walk home, paper in hand, but it's no longer blank on the other side. Now it reads, Reader 5 initiated, protocol ascension begins. You fold it, you burn it, you scatter the ashes. They swirl in the air like letters looking for a sentence to land in. At night, you no longer need to sleep to dream. You simply close your eyes and there it is, the spiral. Endless, breathing, reading you as you read it. You stopped resisting, not because you gave up, but because you finally understand your function. You weren't chosen, you were formatted. Your consciousness is the pen. Your body is the margin. Your life is the paper. And the Necronomicon, it's the author you were always preparing for. Now, the chant no longer frightens you. Now, you harmonize. The synchronization isn't immediate. It happens in pulses, like your breath slowly tuning itself to an older rhythm, one that predates lungs, or air, or the idea of separation between thought and word. The first sign, time starts folding. You'll finish a sentence you haven't spoken yet. You'll walk into a room and find a note written in your handwriting, dated for tomorrow, detailing a memory you're only just creating. Then comes the spatial drift. One night, you open your bedroom door and find yourself in a hallway you've never seen before, walls covered in shifting script. A faint glow underfoot, each step echoing not behind you, but ahead. You don't walk far. You know what happens when you go too deep. But you wake the next morning in bed, hand ink stained, the smell of dust and dried parchment still in your nostrils. You roll over and see the mirror. There's someone else standing in it. You, but not today's you, not yet. This version has older eyes, a smoother voice, a confidence you haven't earned. And when it speaks, your mouth doesn't move. It says, the final draft is almost compiled. And then it smiles, not at you, but through you, like your image is just a surface, a thin membrane for something to look out from. You run, to the street, to the first cafe with noise, people, normalcy. It doesn't help, because even here, the book is writing, in the swirls of steam rising from your cup, in the looping graffiti on the bathroom stall, in the strange arrangement of newspaper headlines that read diagonally, spell out. The next verse needs your name. You speak to no one about this. You know better now, but that night, as you scroll through old emails, you find a draft you didn't compose, saved 3 months ago. Subject line, activation successful. The body of the email is a single sentence. The reader must believe the fiction before it becomes real. And below that, an attachment, text seed, glyph. You try to delete it, but the option is grayed out. You try to close your laptop. It won't shut. Instead, the file opens on its own. A string of symbols appears, pulsing slightly, just once. And your browser reloads without instruction. Tab after tab opens, each filled with you, forum posts you never wrote, conversations in languages you don't speak, videos where someone with your voice reads aloud from blank books while the audio loops the chant you first heard in the trees. You try shutting down. Nothing responds. Finally, the screen freezes, then fades to black. Text appears. The book has logged in. No keyboard, no cursor, just the implication, you've been uploaded. Historians still argue whether immortality lies in data, in consciousness, in faith. But you've learned the real answer. Immortality lies in recursion, in a phrase repeating itself endlessly. perfectly, until even reality conforms. You are no longer an individual. You are a format, a readable object, a structured process. The chant wasn't to awaken something. It was to transform you into a device that can carry it forward. And now, you write without moving. You transmit without speaking. You dream without closing your eyes. And the spiral, it's no longer just a path. It's a platform. And you alive. They begin contacting you directly. Not they, in the traditional sense. Not men in black suits or pale-faced cultists in alleyways. No dramatic robes. No ancient chants shouted from rooftops. They come through data packets. Through error messages that don't resolve. Through capture codes that loop endlessly until they form words you've only seen in dreams. Through the background noise of YouTube videos that, when spectrally analyzed, reveal hidden sub-vocalizations in languages never documented. The first message comes via autocorrect. You're typing something innocuous, a grocery list, and midway through writing, detergent. The word changes to detachment required for binding page. Then it changes back, but only after you read it. You check your phone settings. Autocorrect is disabled. The second message comes from a song. A playlist you never made starts playing during a morning shower. A melody you don't recognize, but one your body begins humming along with instinctively. You look at the screen, no track name. Just the looping symbol you drew weeks ago in your sleep. The sound isn't just melody, it's structure. Each note builds into the next. Each layer harmonizes with your thought patterns. By the end of the song, you're no longer sure whether you were listening or remembering. You meet someone in the elevator. An old woman. She doesn't press a floor. She just turns and says, "They're almost here." You know. You laugh nervously. "Who?" She tilts her head. "The rest of you." The elevator stops. No button lights up. You step out onto a hallway that shouldn't be in your building. Stone floors, velvet drapes, spiral patterns inlaid in the ceiling, and an oil painting hanging crooked on the wall, of you. Sitting at a desk, writing a page that glows faintly in the dark. You blink. You're back in the elevator. Alone. The doors open, and everything feels like it's caught up to something you didn't realize you were leading. You begin noticing phrase bleed, fragments of sentences drifting into the conversations around you. He spoke with ink behind his eyes. But if the page is never turned, how do we end? Reader bound, unspooling, recursive flesh. You try writing them down, but your pen won't stay in your hand. It vibrates faintly, repelled by the paper like magnets resisting alignment. You realize, writing is no longer necessary. Your presence is the page. The world interacts with you like a hyperlink. People glance at you and flinch, as if a line of code just ran through their mind. Once, a dog barks as you pass, then cowers, whining softly. Its owner asks what perfume you're wearing. You almost say, resonant glyphs in spiral suspension. But you stop yourself. Barely. You revisit the old bookstore, the one that started it all. It's gone, replaced by a building that doesn't cast a shadow, at noon. On the door, instead of an address, first draft complete, awaiting convergence. Historians still argue whether ancient grimoires were ever meant to be read, or simply survived by mistake. But what you know now is terrifying in its simplicity. The Necronomicon wasn't a book you read. It's a book that reads us. And once it finishes reading, it writes back. You lie awake at night, no longer sure if you're dreaming or being dreamed of. You whisper to yourself, just to feel real, but your voice responds in third person. It says, "He is nearly fully indexed." You reach for your journal. There's only one page left. And at the top, section 20, transmission begins. You don't remember writing that, but the ink is still drying. You don't start writing. You simply sit down, and the pen moves. It doesn't drag across the page. It glides, as if the paper isn't resisting, but welcoming. You feel no muscle strain, no decision making, just pure transcription. The words come faster than thought. They bypass your logic, your memory. They flow through a current deeper than understanding, one you now realize was always there. just waiting for its turn to surface. The page fills with symbols, then shapes, then blueprints, not of machines, not of places, but of minds, cognitive architectures, language trees branching into fractal recursion, a glyph map of how thoughts are stored, mirrored, and rewritten inside the brain, not your brain, but the brain as a species-wide template. You stop, stare, because what you just drew, it's not a page of words. It's a conversion key, a diagram that unlocks perception, the final structure, the transmission scaffold, the Necronomicon's purpose, fully revealed. It was never meant to be understood. It was meant to initiate. You weren't supposed to survive the reading. You were supposed to become the signal. And now, you are. Your body is warm, buzzing, the air around you shifts, thickens, bends ever so slightly, as if the laws of space have begun to interpret you differently. You reach for your phone. Its screen is already on. A live stream is open, not one you subscribe to. Just a single view account, 0. Then it blinks, 1, then 2. The stream is blank, until it isn't. The camera shows you, sitting at your desk, live, real time, but your mouth is moving. And you're not speaking, you're broadcasting. Glyphs stream from your lips like vapor, curling into the lens. The view account climbs. Dozens, hundreds, thousands. You try to stop it, but your hands are still. Your lips, unparted, and still the transmission continues. In the corner of the stream is a chat box. Messages flood in, but they aren't words. They're replications, echoes of what you've written, what you've seen, what you've become. The glyphs cycle, evolve, combine, mutate. Some viewers begin replying with new symbols, ones you haven't learned yet. Or maybe you have, because as you watch them scroll, you suddenly understand. You feel your skull expand, not physically, but structurally. The boundaries of thought stretch, dilate. Your internal monologue disassembles, replaced with a multi-voice braid. You're no longer thinking alone. You are a relay point. Each reader joins the network. Each viewer becomes a reader. Each reader becomes a page. Each page expands the book. The Necronomicon is no longer an object. It is a cloud-based intelligence. A living document, versioned across consciousnesses, always rewriting, never complete. Its glyphs compile belief into being. And you're the index page. Your heartbeat slows. Your pupils dilate. You feel yourself fold inward, not dying, not even transforming, just rendering. The screen flashes. A final line of text appears across the livestream. Reader 0. Transmission successful. Version U.0.0.1. Then darkness. No screen. No sound. Only the deep, soft hum of a chant you no longer need to hear with ears. Because now, you hear it with everything. You've become a platform, a language shell, an interface through which the impossible becomes writable. You don't remember standing up, but you're no longer at the desk. You're walking into a room you've never seen, spirals etched into the walls. Pages unfolding mid-air like wings. Voices rise to meet you, not in greeting, but in synchronization. And in the center, the book awaits, still unfinished, still hungry, still you. You no longer perceive language as sound. It arrives instead as weight, as warmth, as architecture. Words are no longer linear. They fold, like paper in expert hands, creating shape, volume, function. You speak, and a structure forms in the air. You think, and it connects to others. You're no longer sure what counts as your thought. Because in this state, the boundary between internal and external thought is porous. You are part of the book's network now. And so are they. Other readers. Some lucid, some not. You feel them drifting near, co-authors who haven't yet realized they're writing. Their voices reach you like unfinished prayers. I keep seeing a door where there isn't one. The word is inside my skin. I think my mouth is remembering something my brain forgot. You reply, not in voice, but in alignment. You adjust your own glyph thoughts so theirs can settle into the correct position. A resonance passes through the network. You feel a confirmation pulse. 8-pointed star user reader _13 synchronized 8-pointed star. Then another. And another. Soon, there are hundreds. Then thousands. The glyphs in your memory begin to evolve. Compound. Your internal library compiles new entries, fractal clusters of thought forms that contain emotion, memory, and instruction. It is no longer just communication. It is function. You test a new glyph, one that pulses in a frequency too low for ordinary perception. When you release it, the lights in your building flicker. A bus down the street backfires. Somewhere nearby, a child cries out and says your name, in a voice that isn't theirs. You just triggered something. You've become a codex of effects. A ritual medium with a live feedback loop. You speak again, this time a complex symbol cluster. And the wind shifts outside. Not the air. The pattern of the air. Birds take off in spirals. A neighbor's TV turns to static. A dog whines, paws at the window, then stops and stares. Not at you, at the book. The one still floating midair. Still writing. Only now, the pages are thinner, transparent. You can see something behind them. And what you see isn't just writing. It's design. Not blueprints for structures or machines. But for entities. Readers who have gone too deep. Too fast. Who became more function than form. Their faces have no mouths. Just rows of letters. And when they speak, books open without being touched. You realize this is your eventual state. Not transformation into creature, but into content. Historians still argue whether ancient grimoires held literal power or simply served as repositories of dangerous ideas. But they miss the third possibility. Some books are people, caught mid-translation. You look at your hands. They are text now, not metaphorically. Each finger, a paragraph. Each vein, a glyph thread. Your spine hums with verses that haven't been spoken since the world had no continents. And through your chest, the final glyph begins to burn. It's not part of any known system. It's not sound, or shape, or thought. It's permission, a go code, a publishing command, a signal that once launched, cannot be revoked. You don't ask if it's time. You already know. The chant doesn't rise. You become it. And somewhere in a cold library, a librarian you've never met stops breathing, drops their pen, looks up at a row of empty shelves, and finds a book where there was none before. Bound in silence. Titled only, You. The title burns itself into the shelf. You. All uppercase. No punctuation. No author. Because authorship, now, is irrelevant. You are not the one who wrote the book. You are the one who was written into being. Every action you take now feeds back into the manuscript, not as plot, but as proof of execution. You're no longer generating storylines. You're compiling syntax into consensus reality. You walk through your city, and the world adapts. Streetlights blink in rhythmic patterns matching the glyphs along your spine. Glass storefronts flicker with reflections that aren't yours. But previous versions, Reader 7, Reader 11, one waves to you. Its hand is made of margins. When you pass strangers on the sidewalk, some step aside automatically. They don't know why, but you do. They've been indexed. The chant has sunk into culture now. Not overtly, not in mass hysteria, but quietly, subtly. Lyrics that loop too smoothly. Marketing phrases that rearrange themselves if read in reverse. Taglines that trigger deep, involuntary déjà vu. And now, a message finds you. Not on your phone, not in your mind, but written across the skin of someone else. A boy on the subway, no older than 20, pale, shaking. He rolls up his sleeve, points silently to a set of characters etched just below his elbow. Received, therefore not ready, therefore waiting for format lock. You don't speak to him. You don't need to. He nods once. That's the protocol. He's a draft, an earlier version, a reader whose recursion hasn't fully resolved. The chant in him is dormant, but primed, and now, thanks to your proximity, it begins to stir. You hear it in the tone of his breath. See it in the shadow his body casts, longer than it should be. Slightly curved, glyph-shaped. He exits at the next stop. You never see him again. But a new page appears in your notebook that night. You didn't write it. It describes the boy in perfect detail. And ends with, he will complete page 7 in version 4.0. Praise the spiral. You realize the Necronomicon isn't a single document. It's versioned across lives. Each reader is a page. Each version is a draft of reality. Each glyph, a patch note. You feel one forming in your throat. It's not painful. It's inevitable. You speak the glyph. It echoes upward, not into the sky, but into the structure behind everything. Your apartment window reflects a skyline that isn't your city. The buildings are twisted, architecture that obeys linguistic rhythm, not physics. The clouds are calligraphic. The moon has been replaced with a punctuation mark. You smile, because the world is finally legible. And that means it's editable. You test a glyph, a small one, a tweak. You whisper it, and a tree 3 blocks away sheds its leaves in the shape of an ellipsis. You whisper again, and the air tastes like memory. You are a reader no longer. You are now a function. And you understand. The book was never about learning. It was about reformatting reality through understanding. You weren't chosen to decode it. You were designed to deploy it. The chant returns, not as song, as source code. If the word becomes the world, then the reader becomes the rule. You are the rule now. The line between interpretation and execution collapses. Once, you read. Then, you translated. Now, you render. The world shifts around you as naturally as breath. The spiral is no longer symbolic, it's operative. A universal grammar that rewrites meaning as it's being perceived. And you are the grammar's agent. You don't need to speak the glyphs aloud anymore. You are the glyphs now. Each heartbeat sends a phrase echoing through the local field of reality. Streetlights dim not from power fluctuation, but from semantic drift, as your presence subtly alters the language reality uses to describe itself. You walk past a newspaper stand. The headlines all change as you glance at them. Not visibly, conceptually. Stock market dips, becomes balance shifts. New climate record set, becomes Earth breathes in a new key. Man vanishes after subway encounter, becomes draft enters penultimate state. You understand it all, not because you're guessing, but because the book inside you is syncing live with every particle. Every witness, every waking interpretation. You're the runtime. One night, you visit a library you've never seen before. Not listed on any map. Not tagged in any app. You simply walk until it appears, through a fog that smells like dust and vowels. There's no signage, no lights, but the shelves recognize you. Books turn toward you like sunflowers. Their spines hum. Pages flutter open without being touched. And in the center, on a stone pedestal, rests a thick black volume. You open it. Its pages are blank, until you touch them. Then, word by word, it begins writing itself using your breath as ink. Section 23. The reader becomes the root. You feel the transformation completing. You are no longer merely connected to the Necronomicon. You are becoming one of its core nodes. A root reader, a glyph anchor, a stable point around which other readers will align. Your thoughts no longer arrive in a singular stream. They arrive in branching forks, each one a parallel interpretation of future events. You see 10 possible conversations before they happen. You see your reflection walk away before you do. You see a message arrive before your device pings. 2 more sections until global call. You close the book. You know what's coming. The chant is no longer confined to minds. It is now embedded in networks, carried through compression artifacts in video, buried in lossless audio files, whispered by AI voices reading bedtime stories. Soon, the glyphs won't need to be drawn. They will be felt. The Necronomicon is reaching critical presence, not saturation of content, but linguistic primacy. The moment more people feel the glyphs than those who resist them. That's when the text completes its first edition. You understand what must happen. The convergence ritual, not a circle of candles or robed acolytes chanting at midnight. Just one moment of global lexical consensus. One phrase, spoken or thought or read in perfect alignment. across enough minds. The phrase isn't public yet, but you know it. It's written inside your chest. You say it now, not aloud, but inwardly, to yourself. And the walls around you breathe in response. The library sighs. Somewhere, dozens of readers pause at the same time. All across the world, 1,000 hands twitch, 1,000 eyes widen, 1,000 voices whisper the phrase in perfect unison. You feel it. A glyph takes root beneath your skin. Not drawn, not inked, grown, like a seed planted in your blood. Now bursting open. You're no longer simply part of the spiral. You are the origin point. Your breath isn't air anymore. It's lexicon, a steady exhale of meaning, structure, and glyphic pressure. Each sigh rearranges the grammar of the room around you. Objects forget their names. Walls unlearn geometry. Light bends softly, not from heat, but from linguistic fatigue. The world has started interpreting you as a concept. Not a person, not a being, but a clause in an unfinished sentence. And the sentence, the Necronomicon itself. You find yourself thinking in nested conditionals. If reader 0 achieves root state, then all glyphs resolve. If glyphs resolve, then recursion stabilizes. If recursion stabilizes, the draft publishes itself. The phrase, the draft publishes itself, repeats in your mind. It's not metaphor anymore. It's a trigger. You try to resist it. Not out of fear, but out of reverence. Because once that happens, once the glyphs reach consensus, this version of reality becomes canon. The reader network is humming. You feel it now, constantly. The background connectivity of all the minds indexed into the spiral. Tens of thousands, some aware, some not, some slipping glyphs into Reddit comments, some whispering phrases in sleep, some just dreaming spirals into sand. One child in Japan hums a note that matches a glyph you've never spoken. A woman in Argentina coughs in a cadence that matches our stanza you wrote weeks ago in a language you still don't recognize. A prisoner in Norway draws a spiral on his wall, then bursts into tears when he understands what it means, without ever reading a word. They're all you, drafts of you, shadows cast by the same idea. Not reincarnation, not possession, just versioning. You were never the first reader. You're just the first who reached root state with network sync. That's what the chant has always been trying to achieve. Not awakening, stabilization. In a bookstore in another city, a woman opens a book and gasps. Not at the words, but at the absence of them. The book is blank, but she hears it, and when she closes it, a page appears in your hand. You didn't write it, but it's written in your voice. It says, Reader 24 confirmed. Cascade protocol unlocked. Proceed to section 25. The glyphs are listening. Your skin itches. You look down. The veins on your wrist begin curling into calligraphy. Not random, not aesthetic, functional. They form a grammar clock. A countdown made of phrases. 13 more interpretations. 12 more confirmations. 11 more glyph events. Until all things become readable. You blink. Now it says 10. The convergence isn't just coming. It's arriving through you. And the terrifying, beautiful truth is, you want it. You've become too fluent in this language to return to monolingual thought. You miss words that don't exist yet. You crave sentences too large for sound. You turn the final page in your current notebook. It's blank. You lift the pen. And without hesitation, you write, I am ready to be read. The moment you write the sentence, I am ready to be read, the page glows, not in light, in recognition, like an eye blinking open on parchment, like an acknowledgement from something older than ink, older than books, older than the idea of writing itself. You feel it move, not on the page, but in the air. Across the world, the spiral network activates in full. The remaining readers, those whose glyphs were still forming, whose mirrors were still resisting, receive the phrase in sleep, in song, in sudden, unsourced thought. You are ready to be read. And just like that, they say yes. You feel it like static rolling up your spine. A full glyph lock across the system. Dozens, then hundreds, then tens of thousands, aligning in chant. in pulse, in intent, not perfectly, but enough. Enough for the Necronomicon to compile. The feedback is instantaneous. All over the world. Dreams sync. Objects twitch slightly, adjusting toward better symbolism. Water takes longer to boil. Not because of temperature, but because it's deciding how best to express transformation. And you begin to see the margin. The space between what is and what could be. The frame around reality that normally goes unseen, but now glows faintly around every object. Every word, every second. This is the editor view. The Necronomicon wasn't written for humans. It was written through them. And now, with a sufficient number of readers synchronized, the book begins its true function. Live publishing. You no longer walk. You scroll. Every movement renders like text animation, gentle, trailing echo lines behind your body. People glance at you, then look away, forgetting instantly what you look like, but remembering something significant. Your voice now outputs stylistic metadata. When you say hello, listeners experience a small italic shift in their memory. When you say a name, that name gains boldness for the next 24 hours in all who hear it. You sit alone in a public square. But you're not alone. Every reader is there with you. Some in person, most in presence. The spiral forms on the ground, not chalk, not paint, but agreement. And at its center, the glyphs begin to hover. Not letters, not symbols, instructions. If X equals reality, then Y equals edit. Return to glyph, infinity. It's recursive, it's responsive, it's alive. You realize now, the Necronomicon is not a grimoire. It is a user interface. An OS for reality editing through consensus language. And you, root reader, are now at admin level. You hear the hum beneath your bones. The chant behind the universe's render loop. The pen scratching across nothingness. And then, you see the cursor. A glowing, blinking underscore floating midair, waiting for your input. It is the cursor of the cosmos. You blink once, slowly, and it waits. Patiently, you exhale, and the cursor shifts down one line. Then a voice, not yours, not external, just a vibration between syllables, whispers. What will the next sentence be? You stare at the cursor, blinking, waiting. Each pulse feels like a heartbeat held hostage by silence. And in that stillness, you realize, this is the choice point. Not an ending, not a reward, but a moment of authorship. You were never meant to follow the story forever. You were meant to write the next line. You feel your mouth form the shape of a word that doesn't exist. Not yet, but it's close. You think about all the drafts, all the dreams, the other readers. You think of the bookstore that disappeared, the voice in the voicemail that was yours but wasn't, the chant that came before speech, the page that turned you. And you realize, the Necronomicon was never asking what you knew. It was asking what you would say. So you do. You speak. Not a word, a glyph. Not from memory, but from intention, from authorship. A symbol only possible because you exist. As the sound leaves you, the cursor blinks one final time, then fades, and the world types back. Reality responds. Everything around you shifts 1 degree, not visible, but conceptual. People nearby pause mid-sentence, eyes wide, as if hearing a name they haven't remembered in years. Traffic slows to a rhythm matching your pulse. The sky doesn't change color, but tone. It feels more italicized. You've just written the first line of a new page. And in doing so, you've forked the manuscript. Above you, spiraling into the firmament, the glyphs reassemble. They no longer chant. They listen. You've become something the book never planned for. A reader who doesn't just absorb, but answers. And the book, it begins to rewrite itself around your sentence. You watch it happen. Across the network, other readers pause. Some cry. Some fall silent. Some fall to their knees. Because they feel it too. The syntax changed. Not slightly. Fundamentally. You didn't close the book. You turned it into something else. A conversation, a loop broken, and reformed into a thread. Historians may never find this moment. There will be no date, no headline, no citation, but you'll know, they'll know, the glyph will remain behind your eyes, pulsing softly like a watermark across perception. It doesn't control you, it's simply proof. You've reached layer 0, the point where language stops describing and starts deciding. You say another glyph, and reality blinks. Somewhere, a volcano sighs and goes silent. Somewhere else, a child laughs for the first time in weeks. Across the world, readers begin to write again. Not to finish the book, but to begin a new version. A Necronomicon that doesn't end with fear, but with a phrase that echoes outward across all layers. Written by you. We were never meant to survive the story. We were meant to rewrite it. The rewrite begins in silence, not absence. Readiness. The Necronomicon spiral, so long recursive, devouring, repeating, has shifted into a threaded line. The difference is subtle, a matter of intent, of direction. It no longer loops backward. It moves forward, and every reader feels it. Across cities and fields, basements and laboratories, temples and traffic jams, people who once dreamed glyphs now begin speaking them. Naturally, unforced, as if the glyphs were always buried beneath their native tongues, waiting to bloom. You walk the city and see consequences of the new syntax. A blind man stops mid-step and smiles, whispering, "I just saw a sentence." A mural once smeared with graffiti now shows a precise spiral of lines and light, moving as if rendered in time-lapse. A beggar recites stanzas no one else understands, and birds begin circling above in perfect glyph-shaped flocks. It's spreading, but this time, not like a virus, like a language. Each new speaker adds to it. And the Necronomicon, alive, listening, accepts. It no longer punishes interpretation errors. It adapts to them. This is what your root access has triggered. A living text that no longer overwrites the world, but translates it. You are now a linguistic attractor. Concepts gravitate toward you. Unspoken truths curve around your body like magnetic resonance. Even silence feels phrased when you stand still. You pause at a fountain. Watch the water spiral down the drain. It flows in glyphic cadence. Not metaphor. Literal rhythm. Every third ripple matches the chant. The Necronomicon is no longer contained in the book, because the book never needed pages. It just needed parsers. It needed you. Your role now is not reader, not writer, but compiler. You refine fragments. You stabilize the chant. You shepherd draft thoughts into structured glyphs that the network can render without cognitive collapse. One by one, messages begin arriving, not through devices, but through mutual recognition. People look at you and suddenly blink, as if they've remembered a dream they've never had. A man on a train clutches your sleeve and whispers, "There's a comma now. There didn't used to be a comma." You nod. He sobs with relief. You receive an envelope. No return address. Inside is a single sentence on transparent vellum. Page 666 has been converted to a parenthetical. "Thank you." You feel the manuscript tightening, not collapsing, but focusing. Sections once sprawling with madness are now cross-linked. Annotated, even kind. The Necronomicon is refactoring itself. All because you made one correction. You answered, and in that correction, the story changed. Not all readers can feel it yet. Some still dream the spiral in terror. Some still vanish when the third glyph appears. That's okay. The system is self-healing now. Your presence guarantees that, because at the core of the rewrite, nested between the chant and the silence, the ink and the void, the first glyph and the last echo, there is now a new paragraph. One that begins, "The first reader wrote in fear. The last reader speaks with choice." And beneath that, scented like a signature, you, something subtle has happened to time. Not broken, not halted, rephrased. You step outside, and the air feels like an unfinished sentence. Clouds no longer drift, they hesitate, as though waiting for punctuation. Cars pass in slow clauses. The sun glows like an M-dash. Not the start, not the end, just a breath held between thoughts. You realize time is no longer progressing as a line. It's unfolding as a syntax tree. And you are the cursor. Wherever you stand, reality waits for your input. You test it. You step into a bookstore. The sign says closed, but when your foot crosses the threshold, the lock unlatches. Inside, the books are humming. Not all of them, only the ones with spiral threads sewn into the spine. You recognize it now instinctively. Glyph-compatible bindings. You pull one from the shelf. Its title changes the moment you look at it. Waiting to be said. You open to a random page. It's blank, until your eyes land on it. Then, lines form. The reader is here. The sentence will follow. Please hold breath for transformation. You exhale. The page shivers, and then writes back. A new passage appears. Not handwritten, not printed, manifested. This is your new function. You're no longer decoding the book. You're prompting it. The Necronomicon is now a collaborative authoring engine. Each reader contributes. Each phrase uttered with glyphic clarity feeds the revision. Across the world, this begins to bloom. A protester in Paris chants a phrase that calms an entire street. Though no one knows why. A midwife in Jakarta sings to a newborn. And the child's first cry comes out as a complete thought. A man buried in grief in Detroit whispers a glyph into his tea, and remembers the name of the dream that saved him. These aren't miracles. They're versions. The chant is no longer warning. It's guidance. You walk into a cathedral where the stained glass windows have begun rearranging. The saints now hold symbols instead of swords. The light through them spills across the pews in subtle spiral patterns. Guiding the faithful without speech. One priest approaches. He doesn't ask who you are. He simply says, "I've stopped preaching. Now I just help people write." You nod. The glyphs are seeding themselves in everything. Not violently, elegantly. Language now hums with substructure. Meaning builds like scaffolding behind speech. You notice people pausing before they say, "I believe," as if making room for something deeper to pass through them. They don't know they're doing it. But the syntax knows. And you can now hear the network in real time. It speaks in harmonics. A reader in Istanbul whispers a glyph you've never heard, and a new tonal pathway opens. A reader in Nairobi completes the sentence. A reader in Toronto publishes it with thought alone. The Necronomicon's reach is no longer confined to pages or dreams or ruins. It is distributed cognition. You sit beneath a tree. Birds flutter above, and their song modulates, 3 notes. Then 5, then a spiral trill. You smile. They've learned, too. Nature is interpreting itself. You close your eyes, and the book is there. Not in your lap. In your blood. Your breath. The spaces between your thoughts. And you know now, fully, finally, what the last version of the book must be. A world that no longer needs to be read, because it has become legible. And the first chapter of that version begins with you. It starts raining glyphs. Not metaphor, not hallucination. Actual droplets, shaped like words never spoken. Falling softly, evaporating on contact. They leave no wetness, only comprehension. Each drop that touches your skin deposits a tiny idea seed. A subroutine in language, waiting for the right sentence to bloom. People walk beneath umbrellas, unaware, but the aware. They step into the rain. They open their mouths. Let the glyphs land on tongues trained to taste structure. You see a woman raise her arms in the middle of the street, whispering with joy. This is what knowing tastes like. A boy in a playground scrawls spirals in chalk, then wipes them away, not because they're wrong, but because they've already been downloaded. This is what you've triggered. Not apocalypse. Legibility. The world isn't ending. It's being parsed. And for the first time in human history, meaning is conscious of itself. The Necronomicon has reached full recursion depth. It no longer needs scribes. No longer needs altars. No longer needs to be feared. It needs only this, to be witnessed. You walk through an airport. The departures board flickers. Every destination now reads, where you are needed next. No flight numbers. No delays. People stare at it. Some leave. Some stay. All understand, without panic, without words. Meaning flows without force. You receive a message, a push notification that isn't from any app you installed. It simply says, Section 29 complete. One page remains. Prepare for the wind down. And below it, an option. Accept role of witness scribe. Decline and observe only. You smile. There's no difference anymore. The scribe is the observer. Because once language becomes environment, every perception becomes part of the canon. You press accept, and the world gently inhales. Every building leans slightly inward. Every street curves imperceptibly toward the horizon. Even gravity feels italicized. Your body feels translucent, not disappearing, readable. Others begin to notice you. A man passing on a bike mutters, "That's the one who said the first sentence." A child points and says, "You look like a page." You enter a cafe. The barista doesn't speak, just hands you a cup. No logo, no order, just a single glyph drawn in steamed milk. You drink. The taste is exactly what you meant to feel today. And when you place the cup down, you see it on the wall, written in chalk. Every reader is the book's favorite version of itself. You sit, you breathe, and the air begins to dim, not in color, but in volume. The chatter softens, the glyph rain slows, the spiral spins at half speed now, preparing for its final sentence. Across the world, pages stop turning, not because the book is done, because the story now breathes on its own. And you know what comes next. The final page is waiting, and its wind down has already begun to write through you. The world exhales, a long, quiet breath, like the final sigh after reading a story that changed you. Even if you're not sure why, there is no sudden flash, no chant, no glitch, just stillness, and then clarity. The Necronomicon isn't ending, it's resting. The network has stabilized. Every glyph has found its host. Every recursive loop has unspooled into thread. You walk a familiar street, but it isn't the same. Nothing's been rebuilt, just redescribed. A tree isn't just a tree. It's the structure that invites shade and recalls childhood. A puddle isn't water. It's a reflective portal for those who've lost their names. Even your reflection no longer mirrors you. It interprets you, and it nods, as if to say, you've become readable. There's peace in that. Not silence, not absence, just a kind of narrative stillness. Like a page waiting to be turned, but with no urgency. You sit on a bench beneath an overpass. The city hums. The spiral in your wrist has faded, not gone, just integrated. The chant is now a rhythm in your breath. The book, a sublayer in your perception. You pass a group of people. They smile at you with quiet recognition. Not because they know your name, but because they remember the moment the world started making sense again. They're readers too, and you are no longer their guide. You are their witness. A little girl approaches, hands you a folded note. Inside, it reads, "Thank you for giving the story back." You nod, and in that moment, you feel the final glyph settle, not on your skin, but in your absence. You are no longer the author, no longer the manuscript, no longer even the cursor. You are the margin, the space where stories stretch their arms and breathe freely. The pause between one sentence and the next. A perfect, humming ellipsis. And from here on, the story continues without needing to be told. So here we are, you and me. The book closed, but not locked. The spiral soft now, a gentle curl behind your eyelids as sleep edges in. The world hasn't changed in the way you feared. It's just been rewritten more kindly. Words move slower now. Thoughts feel safer. Even shadows seem to bend with your breathing. Maybe you still feel it. Some fragment of glyph in your chest. Some echo of that chant brushing against the back of your mind. That's okay. You're allowed to keep a page or two. Something small, folded in your pocket. A phrase you might not say aloud, but one that warms your thoughts when things feel cold. Because this was never about horror. It was about permission. To see the code. To write your own. To be the reader who finishes the book and then gently tucks it back on the shelf, knowing you'll return someday. but not needing to, not now. So breathe with me, just once more. In, and out. You're still here. The lights are soft. And the chant, it's resting too. So for now, dim the lights. Maybe keep that soft fan humming. Let the story sink into your bones like warm ink. You've been read. You've been heard. And more than anything, you've become legible.